Well, welcome to the Online Large Groups webinar. One thing that I love about online large groups is that I don't have to carry 500 pounds of equipment onto campus to do a large group, which is pretty awesome in my book. And so wanted to share that. And you'll notice that we're going to have some little hashtags and GIFs along the way that are completely pointless, but I think webinars should be fun. So we're going to give this a shot. This is me and my family. In case you need to know, that's me on the left. My wife is there in the middle. We met in InterVarsity at a freshman game night. Our staff, Eddie Ekmekshi, asked the freshmen to get coffee together afterwards because in his mind, it was an opportunity for the freshmen to get to know each other. In my mind, it was an opportunity to find a girlfriend. And so fast forward some years and we are married. We've been married for 8 years, and that is our daughter, Anna, there on the right. And she is 2 years old and turning 3 in about 2 weeks, and is watching some sort of Disney Plus thing in the other room. And so if you hear any loud noises, it might be because she's singing with Frozen. I don't know. So I want to invite us to be able to share who are we and why are we here? So I want to invite us to use the Zoom chat feature that a couple of us have been using already. You should hopefully see it in the status bar under more, or you'll just see the chat. Go ahead and answer just very briefly. What role do you have with InterVarsity? What's one hope that you have for this webinar? And what's your favorite thing about large groups? Awesome, Adam, thanks so much. Learning best practices for interaction. Favorite thing is group discovery, awesome. Nick, thanks so much for writing. Yes, taking what we've been doing in person and doing it virtually, that is awesome. Seeing students interact with each other, worships and talks, that's great. Rachel has entered the chat. CSM at UC San Diego. Good pointers about thinking about large group. And love that large group is the space for the entire chapter to come together. I totally agree with that. Shelly, team lead in East Tennessee. Making large groups not boring. Yes. Hashtags and GIFs that apparently aren't working right now is a great start. Seeing students interact. Welcome, Christina. Awesome. Well, for those of you still typing, I want to invite you to continue to do so, and let's be reading each other's answers. We could have unmuted and talked through this, but I'd love for us to just get used to using chat, because that's one of the ways that I found by accident that students love to interact with each other during everything on a Zoom large group call. So it's fun to have the chat up and see that. Welcome, Annie. All right, so why are we here? So on the left is our normal in-person large group at Cal State Fullerton. That's in the Kinesiology 199 room that we know and love. Out that door on the left is this wonderful little entryway where the welcome team can set up and have food. We have our own restrooms and water fountain. And there's no classrooms on any of these walls. It's a standalone classroom. And so we can be as loud as we want. And so we are used to doing large group in that space, and we love that space. In the middle is Marshall from How I Met Your Mother running away from our first online large group on Zoom. And so how can we translate these in-person large groups that we have into the online space? So our challenge, I think often we are tempted to start with the what and the how of what are we doing? What are the types of things that I should be doing in a large group, and how do I do it? And doing a lot of the technical questions. And my hope is instead to focus us on the why. Why do we still do large groups? Why do we want to have large groups in the middle of this online space? And then the who. Who are the students and leaders that we can empower to lead in the midst of these spaces? And then finally, the how. What are the tips and tricks, and what are the ways that we can do it? So my hope is that we will leave with a shared experience of worship over Zoom, and I've invited some friends to help us with that. An understanding of how to translate serving roles for in-person to online large group leadership, and some ideas on recruitment and thinking about how to bring students into this format. And at the end, we'll have some time to also talk through some technical things. So I'm going to invite us to start our call with worship, not just as a how-to or a show you, But actually, I'm going to invite two students of mine to lead us into the presence of the Lord to actually worship together wherever we are. Whether you're watching this live or watching this as a recorded webinar, join us in worship. So from Cal State Fullerton, Leo Santos is someone who usually leads worship for us at our large groups and was the worship leader for our very first online large group. So he has some experience to share with us. And also Josh Leung is going to help us run PowerPoint for it. And his InterVarsity day job is to be the director of our ISM ministry at Cal State Fullerton and Fullerton College. So I'm about to stop share my screen, which is going to be super jarring. So we're about to all see each other again. And then Josh is going to share his. Hello to all you wonderful faces. Awesome. Leo, would you lead us?
What's up, everybody? I'm Leo Santos, and yeah, just like Ben said, let's indulge in some worship. So, Lord God, we just want to praise you today, and we want to thank you for this opportunity that we have to be in this presence of yours, God. Bless these leaders, God, as we just want to worship you in spirit and in truth, Jesus. And we know that where two or three are gathered, you're in the midst of us, God. So we want to lay down all of our burdens and all of our problems at the throne of the cross, God, and we just want to see the victory that we have in you. So we just want to worship you today. In Jesus' name. The weapon may be formed. The weapon may be formed, but it won't prosper. When the darkness falls, it won't prevail. I'll eternal only how to triumph. Yes, 'cause my God will never fail. Sing it out. Oh, my God will never fail. 'Cause I'm gonna see a victory. I'm gonna see a victory. For the battle belongs to you, Lord. I'm gonna see a victory. I'm gonna see a victory. For the battle belongs to you, Lord. Yeah. Oh, we worship your name, Jesus. There's power. There's power in the mighty name of Jesus. In every war he wages, he will. I'm not backing down from every giant. Yes, 'cause I know how the story ends. Sing again. Yes, I know how the story ends. Because I'm gonna see a victory. I'm gonna see a victory. For the battle belongs to the Lord. I'm gonna see a victory. And I'm gonna see a victory. For the battle belongs to you, Lord. You take what the enemy meant for evil, and you turn it for good. You turn it for good. See it again, turn it. You take what the enemy meant for evil, and you turn it for good. You turn it for good, Lord. You take what the enemy meant for evil, and you turn it for good. You turn it for good, Lord. You take what the enemy meant for evil, and you turn it for good. You turn it for good. 'Cause I'm gonna see a victory. I'm gonna see a victory. For the battle belongs to you, Lord. Come on, we'll sing it out. I'm gonna see a victory. I'm gonna see a victory. For the battle belongs to you, Lord. And I'm gonna see a victory. And I'm gonna see a victory, yeah. For the battle belongs to you, Lord. Oh, I'm gonna see a victory. And I'm gonna see a victory, yeah. For the battle belongs to you, Lord. You take what the enemy meant for evil, and you turn it for good. You turn it for good. Oh, you take what the enemy meant for evil, you turn it for good. You turn it for good. You turn it around, Lord. Every problem that we have, every issue that we hold, we turn it to you, we turn it to you, you turn it around, God. Come on, guys, don't be afraid, wherever you're watching, to just worship Him, to just bask in the presence of His goodness. We love you, Lord. We love you, Jesus. I'm gonna see a victory, a victory. For the battle belongs to you, Lord. And I'm gonna see a victory. And I'm gonna see a victory. For the battle belongs to you, Lord. The virus belongs to you, Lord. The pain belongs to you, Lord. 'Cause you turn it around. You turn it around. So good. We never lost the battle. And I know that you never will. So God, we just want to praise you in this time of worship, in the season of just confusion. God, we just want to praise you, and we give it all to you, God. And we want to bless all these leaders, these Ivy staff leaders, and bless their hearts, because God, we just want to lay it all down at your feet, God. This is all just kind of different. This is all just kind of new, but we want you to know that it's for your glory. And everything that has breath shall praise the Lord. This virus shall praise the Lord. These people shall praise the Lord. We just want to thank you for this opportunity that we have to praise your name as we sing this last chorus. We're gonna see a victory. We're gonna see a victory. For the battle belongs to you, Lord. We're gonna see a victory. See a victory. For the battle belongs to you, Lord. Now, wherever you're at, you sing. Yes. For the battle belongs to you, Lord. Lord.
Amen. Well, Josh, you can feel free to unshare that. We're back to our jarring selves here. Let me go ahead and see if I can reshare my screen. Josh, Leo, Christina said, thanks so much. All right. I think that we are back together here. So, see if I can get this PowerPoint to move a slide again. So I'm going to invite us into a little bit of debrief. And so we're going to spend about 2 minutes in breakout rooms, or what I like to call secret parties. And so what was worship like for you, and how might you contextualize that to your campus? And so not just was it good or was it not good, but as a worshiper, what was it like for you to engage in the midst of that? Even in the midst of just the lag and latency of having it come through a phone microphone. And for me, contextualizing it, bringing Leo into the midst of this, I knew that he could sing and also play an instrument. And so I identified him as, hey, let's invite him to lead in the midst of that space. How might you contextualize that? So I'm going to go ahead and open up some breakout rooms here. Hello to those of you who are watching on the webinar. I just want you to know that you are seen and noticed, and the Lord loves you. I know that can be cliche, but it's honestly the truth. So what's up? I'm so glad that you're watching this. Our friends are chatting it up and talking to each other in the breakout rooms. But I hope the worship was helpful for you. I think for me, I really appreciated that we were able to do it, even just in light of it not working perfectly. We weren't able to get any like quality external mic for Leo, and so he was playing to just his iPhone, and so that little mic doesn't pick up the full range of the keyboard and the voice. And even though it wasn't quote unquote perfect, I really appreciated the way that we're still able to be invited into the presence of the Lord. And so, yeah, I think my hope is that we would think about how to contextualize this. I like the opportunity to have one person lead it in light of many, because with the one person, you're just taking away the variables. It's the same reason why InterVarsity Live didn't do live worship with many people in the same room. They recorded it in parts because with lag and with internet issues and all of that, getting people to sing together is far too difficult. And so, yeah, we have a couple different worship leaders in our chapter that can play an instrument and sing like that. And so right now we have them on a rotation where different worship leaders are leading each week at our large groups. And so I invite you to think about whether that's you as a staff or alumni or volunteer or student. If that's you doing that, or you're empowering a student to do that, yeah, that's worship. So we'll be bringing back our breakout rooms here in just a moment. Awesome. Well, I want to invite us to be able to share that experience. And so maybe can we just hear from someone, whether it was experiential or a contextualization answer? If you wouldn't mind unmuting, I'd love to hear from someone.
Our group was just talking a little bit about not necessarily having competent student worship leaders, and so wondering about contextualizing to worshiping through a shared YouTube video.
Yes, that can totally be done. They actually just today released the InterVarsity Live playlist of all 3 songs that they did on Ivy Live on this past Friday. And so, yeah, you can definitely do that using the share screen function. And when you use the share screen, you just have to make sure to click share source audio when you do that. And that allows the audio to pump through. That would definitely take some trial and error to make sure, maybe test it with some people before you know it works. But that's definitely doable, yeah. Well, thanks so much for sharing. That's a great example. Leo is blessed and confident and is able to step in and do that with us. And a lot of our worship leaders have different experience leading worship, and we're going to have to think about how to either help empower them and encourage them, maybe to try a song or to try it with some friends first, or streaming music that way, just like they did for InterVarsity Live. And that works as well. So I'm going to invite us here to move on. So roles, this is a key thing in thinking about our large groups. What roles are needed? So you know better than I do what normally happens in your large groups, what some of the roles are, who serves in different teams, what staff do or volunteers do or students do or alumni do. And so it may be helpful for you to make a list and think about what was your normal large group? What did that look like? Because that's going to help you think about translating the in-person to the online space. So I think my next slide is about to be very jarring. So I'm going to invite you to join me in this very busy slide. Don't worry, we'll get away from it really fast. So this is a little list for me of moving roles online. So in the left is some of the in-person roles that we had for our in-person large group. I put a strike through on the things that we just took out for the online. So we don't need a set up and tear down team. We don't have church and food coordination. And we chose not to have a game leader, at least during our large group. We did Jackbox as our afterhang, but we wanted to just simplify it to have fewer things so that we can focus on what was most important to us. And then on the right are some of the things that changed. So the blue I made, these were changed roles. So the Zoom host became the audio tech that has the participants part open, that can manually mute people if they join and unmute themselves. Some people aren't used to Zoom, so it's helpful to have someone that's kind of monitoring all of that. A pre-party leader, so we did a half hour before, join, hang out, let's talk together. And so our welcome team kind of just became one pre-party leader. PowerPoint's about the same, but they had to learn how to use share screen. We had 2 MCs and we moved it down to 1 because with lag and Wi-Fi issues, it's kind of hard to have a back and forth as MCs. Our worship leader, in our context, we have a large team that we boiled down to 1 person. And so that was new for us. The speaker is now talking to a camera, and we were using a paper contact card for our large group that we had to have our administration team develop a virtual contact card. So these were some of the things that we thought of going from left to right, moving online. And so for you, you might have other things that are important parts of your large groups that you're going to want to think about. Who are the people that we can empower to lead them? So just some questions to think about how to guide the roles. So the question we asked is, what are the most important parts of our large group, and what do we want to keep to move online? And then also, who can we empower to lead those things? And I'm a huge fan of empowering students to do more and more leadership in our ministries. And so I just want to add bonus points if we can think about ways to empower students to do roles that perhaps a staff had been doing in the past. This is a great opportunity as we're trying new things and innovating, and we're playing around on Zoom. It's an awesome opportunity to think about how to empower students. So I'm going to send us back into our breakout rooms for just a moment. I just want to invite you to engage. What was standing out to you about the roles? What are some, maybe what's an important part of your large group that you want to translate online? And what's a way that you can empower students to lead? Thanks, Nick. I love your hashtag. Thanks for joining the hashtag game. I see you in the chat. All right. Breakout rooms. To those of you who are watching on the live stream, on the webinar, the pre-recorded webinar, it could be helpful to make a list of roles. If you have a team that runs your large group, this definitely shouldn't just be a thing that staff does. It's an opportunity to get that team together, or to get your large group director on a Zoom call, and to think about what are the things that we normally have in large group, what are the roles that we've had in the past, and how can we still have empowerment and student leadership and ownership in the midst of our large groups, and even taking a look at things that maybe staff used to do, but now a student can do. Maybe it could look like asking the fellowship if anyone has experience leading worship. There might be a worship leader in your wings that you didn't know about. I know for me, when I joined the church that I'm in now, I didn't tell them right away that I'm a bass player, and I don't know why, but I was just kind of getting to know people, and then the secret got out that Ben plays bass, and then quickly I was brought into the worship mix as a bass player that was playing on some weekends, and so you just never know who's in your wings. And on that topic of worship, friends, if you are in the midst of this and you're just feeling, man, I really wish that we had more students that could lead worship, that had experience in worship, I invite you to intercede for that. In our experience in Fullerton, we've been interceding for worshipers, interceding for people to join our fellowship, that have a heart for worship, that have experience leading worship in their chapters. And I just want to invite you. That's one of the things you can intercede for is, Lord, send us worshipers. What an incredible blessing they are to our communities. And you never know who you're going to find in the midst of that. And so make a list of some of those roles, be thinking about how we can empower people. And even though that slide was a little crazy, I'm hoping to share this later on in the webinar, but I do hope that we try to simplify and not do too much, especially for your first large group. I don't think we have to, run this perfect structure with all these different components and, translate every facet of our large groups into the online space. I think creating a great sense of family, having worship and prayer, and perhaps having a message or whatever content you want to bring, that's a win. Getting people together to be with the Lord, that's an incredible win. And so definitely don't feel overwhelmed that you have to translate everything from large group to in-person because that's just not needed. I'm going to bring the breakout rooms back in. If you're still listening to this webinar, you're really cool. I find it really hard to listen to long webinars. So if you're still watching, you're awesome. All right, I think everyone has joined. I might have missed that, but hello, everyone. I'm going to go ahead and move us on. Or no, before I move us on, I want to invite us to answer, just like last time, if someone wants to unmute and share a thought that came up for them, I'd love to hear from you.
In my group, Rachel shared about how important it is that we assign roles to the leaders so they feel like they have some buy-in to the time. I really like this list of roles. This is really, really important, I think. Just to mention some feedback with the national large group last week, thought it was great. I thought a bit top-heavy with the MC. I think if we could have her speaking a lot less and having just maybe Rachel had suggested even more worship. James's message was great, but it was just a little bit too top heavy with MC stuff. Mm-hmm. I don't know if anyone's giving that feedback, but great idea. Just wanted to get that in there.
That's awesome. Thank you so much, Kathy. So one of the things that I heard was the opportunity for student empowerment. I think it's a great opportunity for us to rethink why we're doing things and who we're doing things. And that was a classic thing for me. When I first came on staff, I felt like I had to be the staff superhero doing all the things. And so I was the setup and teardown team. I was the worship leader. I was the speaker. I was the welcome team. And I would go home and just be crushed because I was doing 7 people's roles. And it wasn't until my supervisor, who was far wiser than me, said, "Ben, what in the world are you doing? Stop doing what you're doing." That's when I started to realize, not only is this better for me and I'm going to stay on staff longer than 5 minutes, but my students love to help. And like Kathy said, when they are empowered to help, they're more excited to come. A lot of students come to our large group because they serve and they love to serve and be with each other. And so thinking about empowerment and roles is helpful. And Kathy, I appreciate what you shared about the MC. I think being in the midst of those spaces, we're going to see the things that we're like, I wouldn't do it that way. And so one, we can definitely pass along that thought about the MC. But then 2, I think that's helpful for us to think about how we're going to coach our MCs, to think about how long they're going to talk or how we can break it up. And so it's helpful to be in those spaces because we get to see what we like and what we might change. So yes, I'm going to move us along. Like I said, this next slide has my favorite GIF. So this is how I feel sometimes when I'm recruiting students. This is Carol Baskin from the ultra famous Tiger King on Netflix right now. Sometimes I feel like this, where I'm trying to recruit students and I am older than them and I'm in a different generation. And so yes, as we think about how to bring students into these spaces, if you feel like that too, welcome to the club. So I want to invite us to think about what are some of the barriers that students have to overcome in the midst of our online large group. So there are some things that are going to keep them, that are preventing them from joining us. And so I want to help us think about those. I have a list of a couple of them. So one is, I've talked to students that are talking a lot about feeling zoomed out, especially if on your campuses, Zoom is a primary way that they're going to class. There's just a feeling among students right now that I'm sick and tired of getting Zoom room codes and join links and invitations to Hangouts. I'm hearing that more and more. And for some of us staff, maybe you feel that way. Maybe this is the 500th webinar that you've been invited to in the last 2 days. And so I think students are feeling zoomed out, and we can think about ways to help it feel fresh and new and worth the click. I think a lot of students are experiencing the lack of motivation and feeling overwhelmed with life. And we want to be able to address that and think about that and how we're recruiting, how we're connecting with them, knowing that a lot of them are retreating to Netflix and Disney Plus and other things instead of running to community, sometimes holding themselves back from community. And we can think about how we can help press them through that barrier. There's technological issues where some students don't have laptops or smartphones. Lots of students don't have great Wi-Fi. Some don't have Wi-Fi at all. And so we'll have to think about what is my campus context? Do my students have access to the technology they need to join this large group? Another is that it's devoid of familiarity. So I've talked to students who say, I don't know what day of the week it is. I don't know what time it is. I don't know what month it is, because we're used to the structure of our lives keeping us going through our large groups on Thursday night. And so our students have class. They know what they're doing for lunch. They have a typical thing they do for dinner, or they're holding out to eat our free pizza that we have at our large group. And maybe they're used to walking from that dorm to that room or parking in that particular parking structure. The familiarity is all gone. And so it feels so weird. Your leaders might even forget that it's the day that large group's supposed to be. It's just so devoid of all familiarity. And the last thing I want to say is I think there's a temptation to shop for the best content, whether it's us or our students. With everything moving online, sometimes we look for the church that has the best worship or the church that has the best preacher. And there can be an assumption that if we assume really good Christian content, that's going to be what helps us draw closer to the Lord. I'm all for great Christian content, but I think that doing it in interdependent community and inviting our students to be with each other in the context of going through this college experience and certainly being online college experience together, we want to help them through that barrier. Yes, I love these hashtags, Nick. This is great. I wanted to make sure to acknowledge the chat. And so I just want to acknowledge that there's definitely more, and we can talk about them in the Q&A or any ones that you guys want to bring up at that point. But these are some of the things that we have been thinking about, or I've been thinking about, of some of the barriers. So some of the ways that I think could be some next steps for helping students press through these barriers. So one, this is really simple, but we can be interceding for them. Every day I'm trying to remind myself how isolated, how unmotivated, how students are dealing with anxiety and worry. Some are dealing with depression. And so trying to remember that our students need our intercession and we want to pray for them. Another is caring for our leaders. Sometimes I fall into the trap of leading the charge and come on leaders, we're going to do this. And a lot of our leaders are struggling with life. I was just talking with one who is trying to figure out how to file for unemployment and doesn't know how, right? So the types of things that our leaders are going through are so vast that the care and the leadership that we provide to them in this season is going to help them feel like they're on a solid ground and they're actually able to then turn and love the people around them. Obviously, classic 101 follow-up, sending texts. We found that sending a check-in text first is way better. A text that just says, join this large group, here's the link, gets ghosted. But when the very first text is, hey, how are you and your family? How can I pray for you? Oh man, we were getting like 90, 100% response on those. And then you can follow it up. By the way, we're gonna have this large group coming up. And it's also an opportunity just to care for our students in the midst of that. So that's great. I wanna say inviting a student to be trained to give the message, this takes some preparation and some thought. But if there's a student in our chapters that we realize like, actually, that could be a next step in their discipleship, is giving a message at a large group. This is incredible for a number of reasons, but also for recruitment, because our fellowship, when we have students speaking, they get so excited. When Ben is speaking, it's just Ben again. But when that student leader is speaking, oh man, it's like a party. They're so excited to hear. They're cheering that person on and calling them pastor. There's a lot of joy that happens when that happens. I think for all of us growing in social media use, empowering our students to do that, we don't have to be the social media experts. We can get some students together that are excited. I have students making TikTok videos and Instagram live bingos and all sorts of weird things that I would have never done. But we're dreaming it up together, and we're trying to let them roll wild on social media, tagging our Instagram, and then we can reshare that to our story. But yeah, empowering students to do that. And then we host a pre-party. So the half hour before large group, join the call, talk, and hang out. That's like a slow burn to get everyone in the Zoom room. And then we also went 15 minutes ahead of that on an Instagram live. Me and a leader were just chatting and talking about things around us and letting everyone know that the pre-party was about to start. A couple things that we've been learning. So moving online has been a season to grow in student empowerment. I've said this before. This is such a great way to be able to grow in student empowerment and yeah, growing in what are the ways that we can invite students to do more parts of our large group. Also, online large groups are easier than we anticipated. I love this. There's just a lot of things that are required to put on a large group in person, especially since we don't often own the rooms and buildings that we are meeting in. And so it's worth a shot. It's hard the first time, but I think we realized it was easier than we thought. And then lastly, worship and prayer helps that stale Zoom environment be filled with the tangible presence of the Spirit. I love that, that we get to experience more of the tangible presence of the Spirit, and Leo helped lead us into that today. So my hope was we would leave with a shared experience of worship over Zoom, an understanding on how to translate serving roles from in-person to online, and ideas on how to recruit students to try this new format. And so with the time that we have left, if there's any technical questions or any follow-up questions on any of that, I just want to invite us to unmute ourselves and join the conversation together. Yeah, because there's just a lot of components about these that we couldn't cover all together. So feel free to unmute yourself, or you can jot down my email if you want to send me a follow-up as well.
Ben, could you just share maybe in real time what you were learning about how to do the PowerPoint shared screen, and when was it getting stuck, and how did you fix that?
Yes, you mean in the midst of this webinar, right?
Correct.
Yeah, so I've always done a share screen of just like the box of something and not taking it all the way to full screen in the midst of PowerPoint. So I realized like that was an oops moment for me, where I was like, oh man, I didn't fully try, because I had fully screened it, but I hadn't tried it in the midst of the share screen. I was experiencing a little bit of lag where it wasn't quite taking it to the full screen. And then I was having trouble sometimes where it wouldn't click right away. And so I would actually bring my cursor down into the bottom left, and I was using the left and right buttons on the bottom to help bring us through. And that was more helpful for me. But that's part of why I also brought Josh in the call. We have some students, Dimitri and Josh and others, who are so much smarter than me. And basically I invited them to do a little worship together and to get used to it. And so they did like their own troubleshooting session before we did our large group.
Cool, thanks.
Yeah, absolutely.
Dan, I was wondering, I'm going to lead my area team meeting in some of these, in basically what you just did, just because they couldn't hop on this call. Do you have a PowerPoint, or should I just go ahead and use my notes and recreate it or whatever for my meeting? Yeah. Yes,
I will. How about this? Just to simplify, if you want the PowerPoint for this, if you could send me an email at ben.vale. Yep. I will reply immediately after this with the PowerPoint to any of us that want it.
Okay, thanks.
And so absolutely. And then shortly thereafter, they're supposed to be posting this webinar as well on the intervarsity.org/online. And so we can share the webinar with our teams as well, if that's helpful. I'll also mention, and maybe at the end, I'll drop it in the chat. There's also a Google Doc that I made that has some of the particulars of roles and even some troubleshooting. Some of you saw that I dropped that on the Ivy staff on Facebook, but feel free to utilize that as well. And I'll put that in the chat before this is done.
Ben, I'd love to ask a question.
Sorry, go ahead.
Oh, there's two people. Sorry.
Go ahead, Christina.
Okay. I'm just wondering about like, so my question at the beginning of what that I posted in the chat was about like helping students.
Oh, we just got you muted. Can you unmute yourself again?
Oh, weird. I don't know why that happened. My question at the beginning of the chat was like helping leaders lead in a much lonelier leadership environment. Because they're alone and not like, together, meeting with each other. And so like my experience has been that I'm helping to lead our first online large group tonight with just one other student, because it's been really hard for us to motivate other students to actually like want to be trying it. Like she was the only student that joined Ivy Live last Friday. She really had a great experience. And so she wanted to like recreate it for our fellowship. But like it didn't seem like a foregone conclusion to the rest of our leaders who do generally help out with large group that we would like transition this to an online format. So I guess I'm just wondering, and I might have missed this when you were talking about leadership, but like, did all of your people who were already involved in on-campus large group, like, were they excited to try this, or did you have to like do a lot of work to motivate them to want to do this new thing? Does that question make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that is something that a lot of us are experiencing right now, is the ways that I think motivation has plummeted. A lot of our students are away from campus. And also, I think that's one of the symptoms of being overwhelmed and stressed and worried. And so, yeah, those are things that I think our students are dealing with. I think for us, one of the key ways that I focused was kind of starting at the top and down on through my leadership teams. So doing some discipleship Zoom spaces with my executive leadership team, which are our area leaders, giving them space to process how they're feeling. We had our intern give an exhortation to our leaders on what does it look like to persevere in the midst of this season, and that really resonated. It wasn't me speaking, someone closer to their age, and they were all like, "Yeah, we really need to. Like, what does it mean for us to still be with the Lord and allow Him to do work in us?" I've also been trying to encourage our students, and particularly our leaders, to identify and process their emotions with Jesus. So having them write down and journal what are they feeling, and giving them over to Jesus and asking Him to heal them. Because, I don't think that a lot of students naturally just are doing that as a way to process what they're feeling. I would say that to whatever degree we're experiencing that pushback, I think that we as staff can press in and think about like, how can we provide some pastoral care to help press them through, because a really hyped up announcement definitely isn't cutting it right now. At least as the first thing. It definitely helps down the chain, but the first thing, it's not quite working as well. I don't know if you have a follow-up to that. I don't know if that answered it, what you were getting.
No, that's good. I want to make space for other people's questions. Okay. I've been trying a lot of those things. And I mean, we wouldn't even be doing this if this one student didn't want to do it. Like it's not just Perfect. Like our, So yeah, I'll let someone else ask their question.
Yeah, maybe for anyone else that hasn't met with teams yet, I would say inviting them into the planning of it and just say, "Hey, all, I know we're all tired. Would you guys be willing to just take 20 minutes with me?" Anytime that they're planning things with us, if we can get them into that space, a lot of times they're a lot more excited. Rachel, you had a question.
Yeah, I just wanted to kind of ask how your team is interacting with the Ivy Live large groups as well, and if the students are feeling overwhelmed with the amount of Zoom opportunities that are being offered in the university realm, or kind of how you guys have been interacting with your personal large groups and then Ivy Live. Yeah,
so when Ivy Lives were brought in, I think that I definitely felt like, oh, dang, now we have two large groups. So there was definitely that factor. Don't get me wrong, I'm really grateful for the Ivy Live space. I think it's really helping a lot of chapters that don't have all the resources to put on every structure to be able to do that. So it has been a blessing. We did have students that attended Ivy Live. I think that we had a unique edge of saying, hey, two of your friends are featured in this, in the testimony that was shared. And so I think people wanted to watch their friends. And so I think we had that opportunity. But I think I'm more concerned with pressing forward in our context, trying to do both of them every week are we going to come across some like longer term fatigue? I have no idea. And so I think we invited students to be a part of it. We had some students join, but we didn't make that the end all be all. I think we're still trying to keep at least for now, our large groups are like the main thing we're inviting to. And then Ivy Live is the cherry on top of like, for those of you who want this, here's the link. But in your context, in any of our contexts, it might be helpful to flip that, where maybe we don't have as many resources and Ivy Live can be the primary, and we're going to do a different type of structure in our larger spaces. Any others? Well, my friends, I think the last thing that I want to say is even though we've tried some stuff and I made a PowerPoint and we did the seminar, we are all learning this together. I have no idea what I'm doing. So I think if you're feeling that, if your staff are feeling that, if your students are feeling that, I think just normalizing the experience together of we are figuring this out. I have never been invited to so many Zoom meetings and webinars, and that's a whole new experience. Even with like Ivy Live, I saw the international ISM one and I was like, oh, did Ivy Live move to Saturday? So I think there's so many things that are coming across our radars and students' radars. We're just along for the ride together. And if there's any way that I could be of help as we're trying things and learning, definitely send me an email. But yeah, we, just like the worship at the beginning of the call, our large group spaces don't have to be perfect. I think if we focus too much on content curation, I think we'll all lose our minds. And so definitely just trying to empower some students to do some things, getting them to join and helping usher them into the presence of Jesus. To me, that's a win. Not having the exact same number of people that we used to, or having a perfect message or worship or whatever. So definitely enjoy the chaos. I'm just noticing there's more chat. Nick says that we can do an Ivy Live debrief. Yep, we did that, and that was super helpful. And the new Ivy Live link, I think it's the same one as last week with the number 2 afterwards. So yeah, that's it's currently up. And Sarah Bruel, who gave a message at Urbana and is leading Revive Europe, is the speaker. So thank you so much, friends, for joining and for dealing with my hashtags and GIFs and all the craziness. Really appreciate you guys giving an hour.